Well, the Powers of 10 book is based off the Powers of Eames, the Power of 10 Eames video. And
Eames video. Okay.
it's reinterpreted by sort of two artists. One is using DALL-E to generate images for it, and the other one is just using like a Google image search.
Okay.
So I'll send you the link though.
Yeah, I'd love to see that.
Okay. Hello, Brandel. How you doing?
I'm having a great time. Work is very fun, so that's good. I was building a New Zealand style bungalow in Blender to think about how you might make that in CSS. So that was an entertaining trip to Godot.
We're talking about building space settlements. Do you think New Zealand style bungalow qualifies for that? Is that within that vein?
It's the thing that was really interesting to me was the changes that turned something from being a series of boxes into a recognizable space and system for living in, and the fact that they were so predictable and easy to do was quite confronting, because it meant that the sort of the machinery of living has such predictable pieces. That so few of us live in space right now means that it's not easy for us to tell what we need to do to an object or an environment or a space to turn it into one of those. But I think, you know, based on our reading of science fiction, that it's probably not impossible to anticipate. I was showing my daughter some trailers for things like Civilization 5 and Kerbal Space Program 2, and they're replete with all of the sort of accoutrement of how you construct things that are spacey, and some of the games have practical rationales for why that makes something spacey more than others, and so those are definitely a part of that sort of visual lexicon, but not in a way that's immediately relatable right now. Like, I know those things, but not from standing next to them right at this instant.
Yeah, there's this, you know, is manufacturing going to move off planet because it's killing the planet vibe?
According to Alien, yeah, totally.
I mean, apparently that's like the impetus behind a lot of the Blue Origin push. Yeah, Jeff Bezos.
To go to mine asteroids, right, or something.
Yeah, manufacturing space.
I feel like space is generally like everything's harder in space. That just seems like have you tried doing things in space sort of question?
Oh, who was I talking to the other day? That was it was a coffee call. Who was it? It was someone new, who was I can't explain the story, but it got it was Jeff Mayno. I did a podcast with him, and there's a whole thing where people are learning. With he found a guy who's teaching how to do essentially, you know, martial arts in microgravity. And he's got a business down in San Diego, and it turns out that it's lots of grappling, because you can't punch, right? You can't shoot someone. I mean, I guess you could, but you know you're gonna get shot backwards yourself. I found that fascinating. It was one of those things where we would do like a design fiction for a grappling academy for microgravity self defense, right? But someone's actually doing it, and there are probably a couple reasons why someone would take that. One would be like, oh, this is fascinating, you know, and it's a different, you know, you're learning a slightly adjacent use of whatever jujitsu plus judo, because it's grappling, and it's like you're thinking of different considerations, and maybe it's like, oh, this will give me an advantage when I do normal grappling. And then there are other people who are like, I'm training for being a space defense force, dude. Sorry to interrupt, Andrew. It just something clicked in my head about that conversation. Easy up.
You know what would be
Watch your
easier in
yaw.
space?
Watch your yaw. Down, down, down.
I had to attach a tongue jack to my glamp wagon, and I kept on dropping the wrenches. And I feel like had I done that in a zero gravity, I wouldn't have had to have picked up so many wrench drops. I could have just let them float and catch them.
Of course, you run the risk of accidentally flicking it very far away.
I run the risk of doing what?
Flinging it very far away. You know.
Oh,
just-
yeah.
You let it go, and suddenly you reach for it, and it's down the block.
Yeah, that's why I like to attach a monofilament tether
Nice.
to my tools with
I
the
wonder-
neodymium extraction unit.
I wonder if the low gravity also starts like accommodations around like fighting in water. Anybody ever have like those bad dreams when you try to punch somebody? You kind of feel like you kind of punch them in the water. That's
What,
me.
cutting something in water?
No, punching.
Oh, you're breaking up.
Oh, sorry. I'm back on self-defense.
Your microphone just got put underwater.
These are the bad heads. Wondered why I had 2 pairs with me yesterday.
Well, I'll go first. What's going on? Finishing. I'm doing a 10th anniversary printing of TBD catalog, and that's man, it's really hard to. It's a lot. It's a lot of work. That's what I'm saying. This is like the cover, which I'm kind of excited about. It's just this crazy eclectic thing. It's mostly the original one. I mean, obviously the cover isn't, but did some tweaks to the interior, some things that never quite worked right, and that kind of thing. So just gonna do like a small print run. So like now I'm contending with the all the notes I got back from the printer, which I guess I expected. And the same thing with this second book, the book after the manual. So that's done, and Patrick in the Discord really helped with helping me dial in the book design and layout and all that. So the printer has those things, but the thing I was like up until it was crazy. It was like I was done like maybe 4 or 5 in the afternoon. Wednesday, I think it was. Yeah, Wednesday. Only I wasn't. I was like up until 2 in the morning, just trying to get the PDF to cook out right. I mean, it just kept going through this. It was cooking out right, but then I would like be like, you know what, you should just take another look at that. And I was scrolling through the PDF and just like, wait, how did that get messed up now? And then at some point, so that just kind of kept happening in that rinse repeat cycle of like do a fix in the original art, which is maybe back in is maybe back as an image, and then that image is laid out in Illustrator, and that Illustrator file is one of its artboards is laid out in InDesign, and that whole cycle is like I don't know, it could be like 15 or 20 minutes just to do one rinse repeat. And that's because like it's my fault, the Illustrator file is so huge at this point that it takes like 5 or 6 minutes to save it out. It's like a gig and a half. And so that's like a mistake. And I kept thinking, it's like, you know, you should clean that up. Maybe right now is a good time to clean that up. And I was like, no, don't do that. That's like you're in the middle of like a music showcase. You decide, I don't feel like playing saxophone anymore. I want to play guitar now. And so that just kept me up so late. And I had this, I had this feeling, and I was like, what's this feeling? Like, what's going on? I was like, oh yeah, this is like the all-nighter in college. It's just like that feeling of like exhaustion plus you can do it, and it's like the quiet that's around you, like nothing else is stirring. So there's that. And then Jed and I yapped yesterday. Was it yesterday? I'm still tired. Like I fell asleep on the sofa in the middle of the afternoon and then woke up at like 1 a.m. So great. That's cool.
It was yesterday.
Yeah, it was yesterday. Jed and I were talking about the sheep project. What should we call it? What do you call it in the Discord? Android's Dream?
Right now, it's that Android. You got rid of the do.
Yeah.
Got rid of the do. But yeah, it could be something else. Yeah, I just randomly try things on documents, but I don't know if it's quite right yet. Any ideas?
So I say that again. You kind of went off band for a second.
Oh, I was saying I've kind of just been randomly putting different names into documents as in potential. What is the name of this thing if it's not Android's Dream of Electric Sheep?
I think it's Android's Dream of Electric Sheep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I like it because you just remove one word.
Right.
And then hopefully, you know, maybe we're sufficiently adjacent that no one from the PK Dick Memorial Trust is going to come sue us.
Right. It's just enough off. Yeah, I think that's kind of what all the paperwork is saying, I guess.
Maybe we should say, just for those who haven't heard, or that what we're doing. Do you want me to do it, or you want to do it?
Oh, you always started off well, and maybe I'll join in.
So March 13th. Damn it, I got to finish this application. So yeah, I would nudge Jed a few or 4 weeks ago to I was just asking him if he was playing around with Midjourney yet, and he was like, "Oh no, not really." And so I was like, "Oh man, you should." And it was just there was no reason for the prompt other than like I wanted someone to be having fun also. And so Jed was like, "Well, can you give me some prompts?" And so I gave him the prompts I was using for cars and stuff, doing vehicles, which was just my kind of like idle pastime, which has now become like another project. And Jed did it, you know, Jed did it as Jed would do it, and he started getting these sheep. I tell people, Jed, that like hoofed animals are kind of your muse in some way, and
Mhm.
and then the next day he's like, "Oh, check these things out." I was like, "Oh man, that's cool. Like I think there's something there." The sheep that he was getting out of Midjourney, and so felt like it could be a thing. And so we started talking about it. Maybe these are images from a like a, I don't know, like an auction or something in some adjacent weird kind of Gibsonian universe.
Yeah.
Cybernetic sheep.
Yeah, I think we're going off of where you were already going, which was well, I think Auto Trader was sort of the first thought.
Yeah, because I'm doing the Auto Trader thing for the cars. The Auto Trader could be what would be an Auto Trader for sheep, or like, you know, like a farm oriented catalog. Like, you know, here are the sheep that are if you're looking to expand your clock. Yeah, like an Uncle Henry's.
Yeah, that's where I grew up. There, that was the one that kind of had ours too. Yeah, right. Yeah, you got it there. Yeah, it's just a fun read in general because it's just all in a weird dialect of Maine speak for the most part, or you know, northern England there.
Speaking of It's like they've got karateathome.com. Subscribe to learn karate.
Yeah. And then, yeah,
Hummingbird Fish Finder.
Yeah,
Ice
and then-
Drill. Ice Drill Strike Master Ice Auger.
go off on those for a while.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I think you'd been kicking around in the Discord too was sticker packs, trading cards, the swirling, and I think from my perspective is just like, okay, well let's just plug into some of these things you already got going on. So after a while, it seems like we run trading cards is one output and a book is another at the moment, and the sticker idea is a little bit on the side, mainly for logistics reasons, I think, at the moment.
Yeah, so we were talking about doing stickers, and then never found like we kind of stopped looking for tooling to do the kind of stickers that we wanted to do, and then trading cards, and figured out that tooling pretty quickly. So I was like, oh, let's do trading cards, like do like those foil wrapped packets of sheep trading cards, and that could have been enough. But then you showed your sheep to your stepdad, and your stepdad was like, hey, do you know this? There's this guy named PK Dick who wrote this novel called Do Androids Dream Electric Sheep? And it was something about that. And I was like, oh man, now it's a thing. I could totally see that as a thing. And so I started mucking around with a book cover just to kind of feel into it a little bit more, and just changed the title and added your name and gave you an MD and a PhD, and subtitled it like an analysis of the Android psyche or something like that. And then we were kind of off to the races at that point.
Yeah.
And then I shoved the text, kind of piece by piece through ChatGPT, and was asking ChatGPT to do all kinds of reworks and rewrites and interpretations and analyses of the text. And then I did the whole thing. And so I was like, okay, that's a book. And when I read it back, I was kind of like, it's kind of entertaining.
Yeah. Yeah, I've read it in parts. I haven't gotten through all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can feel through the book with it. Like all of a sudden it's like, oh, now you're reading, instead of like a particular chapter, it's actually a diary entry, so it starts like Dear Diary.
Yeah.
Because I asked the robot, I said, like, just turn this into a diary entry. Do a Freudian analysis of the relationship of these two characters. So anyway, I actually was talking to my printer guy. I was like, I think I got another book project. And he's like, all right, well, just let me know.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, and then I guess I dove into, like, at this point, we arrived at the 64 sheep for the for the first set, let's say. And I guess done some preliminary sort of layouts for what the cards might look like on the front and the back. I think it's it's pretty close. Probably could use another tweak or eye.
Do you want to share screen?
Sure. Yeah, let me do that. I'll just kind of poke around. I pretty much have everything in my let's see, host disabled, participant screen sharing.
Are you
or me?
I need to, there you go.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, cool. Here we go. You can see that?
Yep.
So, well, here I'll start, since I just talked about the front and the back of a card idea. This kind of being maybe the front, highlighting a name, it's sort of a breed and sort of its model. And in this case, the example is like a cultivator digester, and sort of the name, or the pretty name, is this Raytheon L21C, and the breed is kind of a combination of sheep breeds and car models, kind of. In the back, this is Go at a layout, which was sort of kind of like a food label idea, taken a bit, and then Julian's he's got to start to descriptions for each one that are kind of in the vein of that Uncle Henry's or an Auto Trader in a way, which this is that same one we talked about, and they seem to have a good sense of humor and some interesting detail. And then I've sort of been teasing out, like, I guess what we're calling the data set, which is just the info for each of the individual sheeps. And right now the data set kind of consists of like a sheep ID, the algorithm, the hoof mods, the manufacturer, some kind of lifespan, issuance, breed, name, model. And then the way that I'm sort of thinking about those is I kind of, and also this is kind of a way of for me to kind of create an artificial scarcity or the idea of if these word trading cards, what traits, I guess, in a way that they have, or what makes them up. And so like these are sort of the list of models. There's the cultivator, the general purpose unit, the nomadic shepherd, champion breed. So there's a bunch of them here. Wool multiplier, and then they're kind of just all mapped out like that. And then algorithm names are at the top in this particular one, and those kind of run down. This run from up to down, and then I don't know. This one's for the hoofs, and this particular one would be a rare one because it's kind of got a polydactyl, a little extra hoof in the back or foot kind of idea. So, and that's just Midjourney sort of doing its thing and trying to dialogue with that. And then these little guys down here are maybe on the scale of, I guess you could say, rarity, or maybe more collectible, because there's only a few that have the jello plasma feet, and this one back here too. They're designed to be these pygmies or hoggets, so they're kind of smaller in size. So it's kind of like, it's just like thinking like that, and then there's sort of the distinction in the breeds, and sort of visually they have some kind of continuity, I would say, to them, visually. So, and again, at first I kind of just was prompting random stuff, but then I sort of organized all the prompts and then sort of assigned breeding visually and kind of conceptually breeding names to them. So yeah, that's where it's all at. And then all of this information really is just filtering into a Google Doc, which we recently talked with Dre about merging it into the final cards. And then he's been helping too with a lot of it, kind of clean up with the images and things like that. So a lot of the data set in a way is there now, not quite all of it, but it's pretty close. And then, we may change a little bit of what the data set is. But yeah, that's what's been going on with the, I guess, the creation of the card aspect.
Awesome.
Yeah. I think that's about it.
Cool.
So let me do the share. Go back on.
It's my usual thing, but it really makes me want to get some of these sheep in 3D. I don't know if folks have seen there's a Blender plugin now that allows you to get a low polygon. You take a low polygon mesh, and then tell it to imagine that as a surface of a certain kind. So the really simple ones that it works very well on are low poly sort of cages for just shacks and boxes, and saying that they're buildings or air conditioning units or whatever. But it would be really cool to have a couple of these as cyber sheep, and just to see what it's like to sort of stand around among them, or have them be able to kind of wander aimlessly on screen. So
Yeah.
I think I might figure out how to do that, because I just want to know where that goes for me. But this is awesome. It's getting really fleshed out. It's really, really exciting as a project.
Well, yeah, it'd be fun to see them in 3D, or even, even in real life, some form, sculptural form or something. Turn this sharing screen on. Sorry. Something's up.
Does anybody remember the video game Lemmings? Where you have to like
Yes.
organize the space, and then the lemmings all go off a cliff or don't. Brendel, your point
Yes,
about this just made me think about like what would the 3D sheep be doing?
I was actually telling my daughter about Lemmings the other day in the context of this new video game out by the Res Infinite people called Humanity, where you play as a sheepdog with this like absolutely seething, like overflowing mass of people that you're playing kind of lemmings with, and trying to get them not to just hurl themselves off of the surface. But yeah, it'll be fun to have an absurd number of sort of chaotically rendered and represented sheep in a space like this as well. Like there's sheep, and then there's too many sheep, which most of the time sheep are, and it'd be cool to get that sense too.
I must have played like. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was wondering about teleremote functionality on the sheep, and so maybe and also the goat simulator. You remember that? Maybe there's somebody said, what are the sheep doing? It seems to me like this is almost like they're on missions with this hardware. They're like, if you've got cultivator digester sheep, they're like competing with John Deere tractors or something. So there's almost like a formation of them crossing a field or something. They coordinate better than regular sheep in their flocking behavior or something.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're like starlings, but on the ground.
Yeah, I haven't really teased out what the models mean more than the description.
Did you ever see those motorcycles in Paris? They had these trikes that could kneel down, and the guy would ride them all around on the sidewalk. And because the people in Paris, they don't pick up their dog shit, and so these motorcycles have this big rear end that is a shit vacuum, and they ride the scooters around the city all the time, just picking up all of the dog shit that everybody leaves everywhere.
Why don't they pick up their dog shit?
It's just a different practice there. They just don't do that. They haven't been commandeered by their dog overlords like we have here in the States.
It's good hygiene, isn't it?
It's arguable. Do you want to go touching shit all the time?
I mean, I do. I take my dog to walk my dog, but there's a way to do it.
Yeah, but I mean,
yeah, like if I were looking at it and I'm thinking like I don't want to touch that, but I do want to pick it up. Let me think for a minute. How about how I could do
yeah, yeah.
that? We can come up with number of techniques,
My sister was really
utility
engaged in this.
devices and
My
vacuum
sister was
hoses.
really engaged in this problem, and she calls it the walk of shame, where you're carrying this little bag of dog poop. And she was actually engineering like purses and stuff so you could have. This was years ago when they first started, and she wanted to have a fashion dog walking poop purse, basically.
Yeah. I mean, the fragile ego that takes that on as shameful, as opposed to like, hey, I'm doing my
Civic
doing my
duty, yeah.
job. Yeah. Oh, look, there's a garbage bin there. Now my shame is sort of sloughed off.
Yeah, so it shouldn't be shame at that point, but there's just there's something about anyway, I guess back to the sheep. Maybe there's a super duper pooper scooper sheep.
Yeah. So that is
Utility sheep versus
Yeah.
industrial sheep.
yeah. The older industrial ones that are kind of are taken in out of a sense of sympathy for their long
Yeah,
service.
there's the
Now they're-
rapid pellet. Yeah.
This one
There's a rapid pellet
this one's
that-
blind in its left lidar array. You know, so you take it in and
Trying to remember the name of a show I saw. It went by, and there was only one season of it, and it was very strange. But there were these robots out abandoned in fields. They were like sort of a little bit like Russian robots, big boys. Do you know what I'm gonna have to find the reference now. They were really beautiful robots.
Not like Tales from the Loop or something.
That's it. Yeah,
yeah.
that's it.
Well, it was
Um,
one season, but that was it. I think wasn't that the intent? Wasn't it
Yeah,
just-
they should have done more because they
Wasn't-
were building for a better story.
I think they're doing another one, but his like second book or whatever, right?
Electric State or something.
I think so.
I wish they would do
Cool.
Ian Banks would get picked up into the films.
So there are domestic sheep, are there industrial sheep, and or sorry, there are rural sheep, but are there domestic sheep? Like is there a sheep that replaces the Roomba? You know, like it'll do your vacuuming, but it'll also like cook you dinner.
Maybe, but or
At
if it's
least
like
it'll pick up your scraps on the floor, you know?
What if the sheep digester kind of augment was there? So like you needed to use a sheep because it was a ruminant and it could process and produce, cellulose strand that you could use in your 3D printer.
Nice.
part of me is like, I get what you're saying, and I love that the question's asked. Like, is there like, and so you want to say yes because it's like, wow, man, Aaron's like imagination just went someplace that I hadn't really thought of. That's really amazing. Yes, of course. Or you could be like, what do you mean? That'd be like having like a Cat Diesel branded vacuum cleaner. No, they have a sector that they operate in, and that's it. You don't see like people with cat riding lawnmowers, even though someone probably said like, hey, you guys should get into this. Your brand equity is amazing. People would have that. And be like, you know what, we're focusing on our strengths. And the consumer market, the margins really suck. We'd have to assert, we would be competing. Right now we only compete with like 3 other brands, John Deere and Volvo or whatever. So part of me is like, no, let's go there. And like, what would they say? They'd be like, yeah, we don't like it. The consumer markets are very fickle. It's very expensive to get into it.
Home sheep are a big risk.
Yeah, it's a big risk. We've had, if you have problems on an industrial scale, you can deal with it and mitigate it, and you're many steps away from, insurance. And
that leads me to a new
we
paradigm.
did it once in 59, and it was real. It's just we're still smarting from the losses.
Maybe there's a critical mass aspect with a sheep because you need a whole flock to be effective. So a home sheep just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, too big. Like today, homes in this world right now are very compact. They just don't really, and the yards are, everyone's doing hardscaping, so there's nothing for the sheep to do.
What if the sheep flock is like an emergent kind of chaotic self-organizing manufacturing? So you let the flock go in a fallen city like Haiti after an earthquake, and they just roam around rummaging the rubble and eating and clearing, you know, because sheep really do take grass down to the basement, you know, like the goats are maybe only a little bit more hardy in that regard.
Mhm.
Call it
I
a
could-
server farm.
I could see like just like they, you know, people don't have like a home fire engine. I could see people have it like they're being plushies, like, you know, just branded plushies or little die cast, you know, or molded, you know, like what are all the things that when you're a kid you're kind of really feeling into, like, you know, backhoes and excavators and stuff.
Oh,
So your parents get you a little Tonka model of it. I'm not saying that,
It's
you know,
a
be-
toy plushie sheep.
yeah. Because
Uh,
it's just like a kid does want a sheep. Like, hey, Dad, can we have a sheep? And you're like, no, people don't just get sheep. But I can you can get a plushie.
That
Okay,
makes
that's
me
good
want to
enough.
have a sheep that counts me to sleep. A little plushy sheep that just counts.
One random, two randoms, three randoms.
You can
four
set it to
randoms.
prime.
It's right.
That's a good,
Yeah, it counts in base
Counts in
two.
yeah.
Another thing that reminds me of, again, thinking back to like flocks and where they kind of live, is the way that they're affecting small changes over very large areas. As they're sort of being put to grass on high country stations in New Zealand. Like my family actually had like 20,000 acres, way back before they ruined it because they were bad at it. So you know, sheep as a force over very large areas has the ability to very much change large areas of the landscape. You know, 20,000 acres is as big as any decent sized city, and so sheep could be used as a terraforming, not just terraforming, but also like urban forming kind of system. If the changes that they affect are actually chewing down and changing the shape of ground so that it's appropriate for flat terracing for cities and curbs and sidewalks and streets and things like that. And so having a range and an ecosystem of animals that are able to kind of participate in build things. It's kind of like when people talk about engineering bacteria for the purposes of being able to build structures, and then you give them bacteria that doesn't have any view of the macro structure that it's creating, but because of the programming of it, effectively, what they individually like to build ladder up into recognizable structures that we're able to leverage and exploit. And you know, sheep could be some or all of an ecosystem for being able to do that, where you have some that are gutter sheep and you have some that are you know, the landscaping terracing sheep, and some that are doing other bits and pieces. If you needed to have a purpose, that, like I think like Julian said, there's not necessarily an urgency of purpose, but that was an interesting thing to do with it. The idea that you could just leave them to run absolutely amok over the vast expanses of absolute nothingness in this country and others, and then kind of roll in 50 years later to find that there's an empty, sort of almost completely ready city shaped space for you. I think that's fun.
Yeah, that resonates. There were so many things going through my head right there. The emergent impact of the whole flock and the God, I'm sorry. You crashed my brain. That's great.
Yeah.
I love you guys.
Yeah.
Rebooting.
Yeah. I just on your last words there, the emergent flock of, you see those videos of how they move, just the movement of them across, you know, land and organization, and even when the dog gets involved and starts herding, I just love like that. Just that there's some, you know, there's a handful of those, I guess they're probably shot with a drone or something, but it just shows this fluidity of you know, the movement of the herd and the flock, and they're really beautiful and interesting to watch.
I think what I was trying to
and
say
I
was
guess that-
how. Oh, sorry. Please go.
I was just riffing. You're good.
Yeah, that's what I thought. The thing I was,
Jed's brain crashed.
yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
cool.
Error packet.
The thing I was noticing about the images is that the integration of the hardware into the sheep's body is more profound than like a saddle or a muzzle or a piece of equipment clipped on. And so what's the there's two, I remember why my brain crashed now. Two conversations. Donna Haraway's biological like roots of this animal, and then the parallel of sheep and workers and electric sheep, and how is AI and technology enabling sheep to take our jobs, and the whole conflict of labor in the future. And like this one here, this looks just so penetrated into the body of the sheep. And so why isn't this hardware like doing something biological, like foam, as the sheep go by in the herd, foam could extrude out of these hardwares and repaint the landscape in some fashion. You know, if you're redressing the environment in some fashion with these things, these are great.
This one's pretty.
It's really helpful
underrated.
to see them as we're chatting. It's so stimulating. How about an entertainment
they're kind of.
category where you have boom boxes and stuff on them?
Yeah, this one was prompted with a boom box actually.
That's how you get your concert out in the field.
I've
and
been
then,
doing some robotic luggage lately, and these look a little bit like robotic luggage.
Yeah, and these are more minimally, I
That's
guess,
a pretty one.
implanted. Yeah, more. This whole row is.
That looks more like
where,
a
like, all these-
sensor sheep. Like that looks like a radar aware sheep almost.
Yeah, they're a little bit simpler. I guess these ones are labeled the rapid pellet replicators. So these ones poop a lot.
Okay, can I pick a bone about just like the form factor of the trading card, just because your aspect ratio is horizontal. And
Yeah, we're good. They're gonna be. Yeah, go on. Go on. Sorry, go on.
Well,
Go
just
on, Ari.
because there's like index cards, and that's its own thing. But that to me, this looks more like a recipe. Where or like Dewey Decimal cards, where, I mean, I don't know. I remember Pokemon in kindergarten, and I remember Magic the Gathering and Yu-Gi-Oh, and they're all vertical.
Yeah,
So-
we had a bunch of conversations about that, but I'm curious. I mean, I'd be interested to continue having that conversation. My bias is just it felt it should go horizontal to me because it's a horizontal creature. So that's essentially my kind of just criteria around it, but it's not a solid decision. But
Yeah.
yeah.
We
and
definitely-
so much of what was happening, like in the Yu-Gi-Oh cards, or the Pokemon cards, is like it's the creature is in situ. Like very rarely are they on an isolated background, right? There's some other world in which they are immersed. Which, I mean, I don't know how much this adds to the whole thing, but like imagining an application for these particular sheep and like building them a background to hang out in could perhaps set us up for the vertical orientation.
There's also just to add to that, there's also a technical aspect to this, which is when you start going vertical, like 2 to 3 or whatever with Midjourney, it starts cropping in. That's been my experience. I don't know, Dre spends a lot more time with it than I do, but that's been my experience when I with the vehicles. So I've just always been like square white background. It gives me a little bit of room to maneuver if I need to change aspect ratio and so forth.
I wouldn't think that the image itself would be vertical so much. It's like that the card would be vertical. Like my understanding is often that the image on those cards
This
is like
is an
square.
example of
Yeah.
cropping.
And then so I think that is possible. So Jed, I think Jed's demonstrating that, and also you potentially lose a bit of the sheep. The sheep gets it's in a tighter box.
It gets
I guess.
smaller. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
these examples.
It looks chunky. It looks full,
stubby.
too full.
Yeah, it looks like it was. It looks uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It looks like it's in a cargo crate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Right.
You guys didn't catch the thing I was saying about the sheep and the worker in the bigger dialectic of tropes in the analysis of this deck. What are electric sheep in the future? And we're sort of calling them laborers here and outfitting them, jacking them to be field workers or something, right?
Well, now I
So-
want to see like the communist style paintings with like it's like the sheep and the laborer together, like, you know, hands clasped and like a solidarity.
Well, it's also just like how deep could you pull that trope across this as a membrane over this that nobody saw directly, but it was in, you know, infiltrating the descriptions and stuff. It doesn't have to be so overt, like we're being replaced by electric sheep, but it's sort of already there. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, sure, the idea of vertical versus not, just to back on that for a second.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not, I'm not really stuck on one or the other per se. I don't really consider myself as like a super strong, say, graphic designer in that respect. So, you know, that's something to explore more for sure.
Like I would just start by like going to Target and I would like buy a pack of like 10 Pokemon cards and 10 Magic cards and then just like rip off the design. I just like I teach it in elementary school, so I would keep thinking about like what it would be like to just start dropping these. And just like, because the kids are always like, oh, you know, Diego stole my Pokemon cards.
The one with the blue frame there looks tight, the way it's up in the square, and it doesn't look crowded like the other one did.
Yeah, that's the vibe. That starts to really feel like, you know, you get some data across the top and all your other subtext below that.
Well, it gives you a place to put some data below it as an anchor, as a graphic, you know, graphic design wise, to create a little foundation block for it to stand on.
So the fact that you have it as knocked out already makes it infinitely more flexible as well. It means that you'd be able to kind of put any shape on any background, and that's a pretty cool thing to be able to play with as well. It means that if you had the wherewithal to be able to create separations or, for example, the depth map, such that you could, like lenticular lenses, the kinds of things that people use for, like truck stop or, kids restaurant placemats that have the 3D effect.
3D effect.
Yeah. So lenticular lens is a whole bunch of vertical strips of lenslets, and what you can then do is use some digital system to be able to create a series of 3D frames to have depth separation between objects. And so you'd be able to do that, or you'd be able to just have, like, say, a transparent transfer and then a sticker of the stuff underneath. And if you have the stuff printed on the front of the sticker, then there would be a visual separation between that and the things on the back. So there's just so many options, and you don't have to do that, but you can by virtue of the fact that you've got these things separable and separated. So it's awesome, and it means that you can kind of play with and imagine backgrounds without the difficulty of having the sheep kind of live on it. So yeah, I'm really excited by the possibility and opportunity that having these blank guys affords, even as Aaron kind of rightly points out, that most of these things live in situ on other people's cards. So yeah.
Are the shadows
play with some things
that baked in, or did you draw the shadows in? Are they alpha transparent?
The shadows are
not alpha. It's actually part of the art.
Pretty much
pixels.
Comes out of, yeah, it's part of the image.
Those are pretty manageable.
Yeah.
Like when you have such a flat thing like that, then it's pretty easy to knock out. They shape, make that alpha blend, and then go like, okay, yeah, but the shadow is set to multiply, and then get the result happening. I spent enough of my career doing that to know that
Like-
I can give it to.
There's a
other folks.
goat.
Yeah, that might be something that might be fun to. I don't know, just try. I'm kind of feeling into what you're talking about, Brandel, and just wonder. I mean, my mind went. My mind, while you guys were talking, my mind went someplace else, which I'm going to say, but we're not going to do for this one because we're going to get this fucking thing done, Jed. This thing screwed around, but it's it was if you printed it on something transparent, which so that you could actually use it as like game pieces on some kind of board of some description.
Yeah,
That could be really cool.
yeah.
With the info block, when you flip it over in white on the other side, so you could still have two sides.
Yeah, yeah. I'm a little bit. I'm loving all this, and I'm not making any. Obviously, I'm not making any decisions. I was. It took a little bit to really not say something right away about having the information on the front, for some reason, and I'm not sure what it was. And I think I didn't say anything because it's interesting. At the same time, maybe I'm just too stuck on, or sorry, not this one. There was one image you were showing, and then someone said like, oh, you could have like the info block. There's room to have the info block. It's like I want it because these things aren't huge. I want the sheep as large in the hand as possible. Like the cards are not huge. I mean, we're looking at them on a screen, and your screen is like what, 16 inches at least. I got one over here that's like 36. So it's like, oh yeah, that's fine. When you get the card, it's a tiny little thing, and there's so much exquisite detail.
Do not be
And-
deceived. Yeah.
And then even if you took a magnifying glass and got into the detail, you're like, oh man, there are worlds in there. What is this? What is Midjourney doing? It's just like,
Right. Does that
Wait,
one have an African necklace on?
Apparently.
you'd have to check with Midjourney.
Yeah.
Yeah, these,
Wow.
I don't know what that is. I mean, all that I really know is I do have the setup prompts.
That's interesting because that's another thing. That's a little guidebook or something. That's
Yeah, that's sort of how, here, like, to go, I think just on this.
Ooh, could you do it like actually? It's like you get a custom order form. Like you don't see a sheep you want here. Like follow these steps to get your own, and it's actually like it's a guide for how to do Midjourney prompting.
Yeah,
I've been teaching
there's a
ChatGPT to make
prompt tab.
multi-prompts for me.
but that particular image isn't on this page. Very easy to find, but
I guess to your point, Julian, about the information being on one side or the other. The question is, like, to me, are these cards in a game or just trading cards? Because the reason like Magic the Gathering and Yu-Gi-Oh and Pokemon are all info on one side is so that people can't see the deck, right? They can't see the cards in your hand. Whereas like a trading card is, you have two pictures, right? At least. Or you could do like the big picture on one side, and then you could do like little, detail shots on the other.
I think we're at it's just trading cards. I think I get the idea of a game and it's kind of it's compelling. I'm not a big gamer, but it's compelling, and also we're gonna get this fucking thing done.
Right.
yeah, I
You guys, have you? Oh,
I
sorry.
mean, I went down the sort of the method of if they are a trading card and just a trading card, the only kind of gamification I kind of came to was like some cards maybe represent more rare and
Yeah, because then
That was a baseball card thing, though, right?
yeah, totally. There were like flipping cards and stuff like that. So I think there if you can provide just enough light anchors for people to if they want, like, construct game mechanics around it in a simple way without there being hard and fast rules, and allowing people to kind of feel into the possibility that this is and the game might just be like trading. Like people might feel like a certain affinity to a particular sheep, or Jed's rarity mechanic could imply as much. And then we'd also talked to Jed about like equipment around the world, around the sheep. So maybe that sort of in a kind of like that loot thing. I don't know.
I got something queued up for you guys. It's only a minute long, but it's so damn relevant. You have to watch it. Okay.
I play a farmland card. I tap it for 1 mana so I can play Dairy Cow because Dairy Cow is a grazing type and I have green as grass in play. I get 5 milk counters on her, which attracts Raging Bull from my hand. Raging Bull has 10 attack, but I can sell the 5 milk counters to the grocery store that I have on my side of the field for 15 dairy dollars. I then convert 15 dairy dollars to 30 mana, and that lets me play Big Gun. I give my Raging Bull a big gun, and now he has 20 attack. Okay, so you win. Now you might say, hold on a second. You have tollgate cards on your side of the field. I didn't say anything. And with tollgate cards, how could my dairy driver possibly afford to bring the milk counters to the grocery store? How, you ask? Just saying things, though. Because I have a good work ethic card in my hand. I play it, and dairy driver gets a raise, which means he can afford all the tollgates. Okay. With the extra dairy dollars my dairy driver has, I invest in and play a cheese factory. The cheese factory creates 1 cheese per turn, so I look at the top 5 cards of my deck, and here we go. The Black Brie. I don't think that card's even legal anymore. Black Brie gets served, and I receive 3 colorless cheese chakra. With 3 colorless cheese chakra, I can tap my cheese factory 3 more times, and now I've done a tap somersault. With a somersaulting cheese factory, I can create triple the cheese output and get 9 cheese chakra. I'm gonna go get lunch. Do you want anything? No, I'm good. I'll be back in like 30 minutes. Good. That's how long I'll need to set up the cheese tasting phase. Jesus Christ.
You know what I like about that video is that we could literally just substitute cheese for sheep's milk, and all those rules totally apply.
Absolutely.
So,
You just have to do the big gun card, and you're set.
what'd you say, Dre? I'm sorry, my connection's kind of bad today. What'd you say?
I was just making a joke that that you could substitute the cheese from that video with sheep's milk, and you would have a perfectly legitimate rule system.
That
there you go.
fella has a number of
He's funny.
satire card games about cows, and he goes down the rabbit hole on his own.
Yeah, that feels that I feel seen when I watch that. Like, this is what my board game club feels like. Like, I play with them Saturday mornings. That's our Saturday morning cartoons, and we play these games that take, in the real world, take 3.5 hours to set up before you can start playing. But just on a note, a side tangent. So I play a lot of board games with friends, and I do it in real life, but I also use a Tabletop Simulator. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that piece of software, but it's on Valve or Steam, and it's Tabletop Simulator, and it's Mac and PC, and it's a place where you can just create tabletop games and cards and dice and so on and so forth, and it understands the physics, and you can flip the table, and you can pirate or get pretty much every major board game that's on the market has a tabletop simulator equivalent. So this is what we do. This started in the pandemic with my friends, where we, instead of getting together in person, we get together virtually, and now a few of us live away from each other, so we play virtually. So anyways, long story coming to an actual logical conclusion. I translated I created a card set called Strategic Science Fiction a bunch of years ago. So I actually imported the whole thing into Tabletop Simulator. So I have a fully functioning little prompt card game in that. And it's surprisingly easy to do, and it's a piece of software. You can sell it on Steam. And so my next thing was, I was going to bug Julian. I was going to ask him for some raw files for his design fiction work kit, because I could turn that into a tabletop simulator thing, or in this case, the sheep. It'd be interesting to create these sheep cards as a tabletop simulator. Once it's actually been done in the real world, you could buy the real cards, but you could, I don't know, come up. You create a digital version where you could.
Now my brain is Minecrafting flocks of different types of sheep. So you arrange them in a 9x9 or 3x3 grid, and you create a little flock configuration, and then it goes out across the board like gliders in a life game. And builds a road or something, you know.
Well, there's something about the applying rarity to it. You could just go old school and just, oh, it's funny that they call this old school. But you could just do like NFTs. These ones are worth more than those ones. That's it. Keep it really simple. They're more rare. I like the idea, the reference to loot. Like, just let people figure out what the game is. We don't need to define the game. Just create some assets, create some sheep. We've got cool characters, and then make some things around the sheep.
Don't
And
even
then,
bother with rules, and then it'll be more like a regular deck of cards.
I bet you somebody else would probably come up with a really awesome set of rules that would make tons of sense. You know, I'm not a game designer. I don't think anyone's here as like a game designer per se, but the idea that you, and that's what I liked about Loot. The Loot project was just that. Here's stuff. Go make your games out of it.
Yeah.
Just got to ask this question now. Could you put suits and Trump on, you know, onto these cards so that they were playable as a regular deck? Could you hide the pips into the cards, or could you make it into just a regular card deck so any kind of card rules could play on top of the sheet, just to make it useful in another way?
I think that's entirely possible. I
You
mean,
could do. You could have cloven hooves as a replacement for spades. You know,
Well,
Something like that, yeah.
we're seeing things like rainbows, right? Some of the sheep have rainbows. You just say, "Oh, there's a rainbow sheep,"
A
You know,
rainbow,
they're-
yeah.
and that could be one of the suits.
Yeah, you could define the rules like that simply, I think.
Or just even hide the number and the suit somewhere in the card in a subtle way, so that it wasn't even showing until you saw it.
Well,
I
you
don't
could
know.
do spot varnish in the actual printing. You could just spot varnish the number on it. That would look awesome.
Mhm.
I mean, too subtle, and you
Oh,
can't
that-
play cards. But yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, Julian, actually, that reminds me, have you seen any samples from the particular card manufacturer that's been identified? Like what the, like spot varnish, or like what a, I don't know.
Oil.
I don't remember.
Yeah.
Whatever you do, Julian, don't use that extra slippery texture that you used on the Design Fiction work kit.
Fair enough.
Cards just go flying out of my hand. They're just all over the place. They're like guitar picks. They just
Yeah, it
fly
was-
into another dimension.
Actually, I don't remember what I picked for this one, but I think I picked something different. They have so many different kinds, and what this one was like, I mean, the name doesn't really even indicate anything. It's just kind of like our new beta surface.
Yeah,
Kinda like,
you told me it
wow,
was an
I have to do it.
experimental. It was an experimental finish. It's a nice finish. It feels nice, but holy man, those things they're slippery like
Are they?
like baby seals on the ice.
Oh yeah, they're super slippery. I like the texture in it, but yeah, I guess yeah. So these are terrible for microgravity games.
Yeah. Premium slip doesn't work in microgravity.
Yeah.
You need to
These
have
are designed
that.
for like 1.5 xg. So
You need the
you gotta-
integrated magnets so they stick to the table.
yeah. Oh man, Kemp left. Oh well. What else?
Well, there was a data fiction that showed up in Trip City that I haven't really had the time to dig into.
Yeah.
Maybe that's another day, but yeah, it was pretty cool to see. It was just like we put in some real streets, and Drew started putting together a thing that's like you can play with it, and the idea is just like, you know, it's imaginary data, but a real data viz.
Say more. Where is that? I felt like I was out of the loop last week because I was staying up until 2 a.m.
No worries. Yeah,
What neighborhoods should be due? So that shows somewhere in San Francisco, Potrero Hill. Is that where it is?
yeah, it's in the Mission District, and we basically just started putting in, you know, it's fake data to show, you know, particular stuff. So it could be, you know, areas of high heart rate, or, you know, whatever else. So, but I put the link in the chat. And so this is like a thing that can be played with. And it's sort of just imagining like what is the output of the skateboard with the sensors on it, right? Like what is the information that it's gathering, and to what end is it being deployed, so that we don't just like do a bunch of data collection and then say, okay, let's visualize it, right? Like you imagine the visualization first.
What I like about that is I sort of now see different data lines superimposed on this visualization. And as like the way you said heart rate, it made me think, well, wow, what if people slow down when they come to this part of the street because it's really interesting, or there's a street busker that's always playing music. It wouldn't show up on the map in any other way except that they cool or they slow down, or that there was an occasional intermittent attraction.
Right. I had one that I've been thinking about recently, because I've been watching myself skate more, and like I basically just run red lights every single time. Like there's enough lag in everybody else's systems that I can just always run the light. And I would love to know more about like my travel behavior in relation to like the sort of prescribed travel behavior of various signals.
I had an experience when the West Seattle bridge closed down, and all of Seattle's traffic just turned into a clusterfuck for a couple of weeks while everybody figured their new routes out. And I knew a way that was sort of under the highway on an industrial road, and I took it in the morning because it was slammed. And then 2 days later, I had to make the same drive. Google had witnessed me beating traffic so badly that now that whole road was, had been taken over. Like everybody had moved over. And I'm sure I wasn't the only one doing it, but Google had learned the new route and was now telling people, to reroute.
Bastards.
Which I thought fascinating. Yeah, bastards. But is there some I'm imagining that the Apple's going to drop their AR goggles or glasses fairly soon. And Julian, you'll just be able to have a whole new set of overlays in your environment that you don't have. So where do those come from? Are those going to be, an app running alongside in your glasses, alongside all the other apps? Because you don't want to have to be modal necessarily. You want to see, get into traveling. And so your mapping is up there, and your sites and your commercial opportunities. They're going to definitely hammer that into hard form. But then you get to your question of like, how do you turn on and watch the ambient traffic speed and score yourself against it?
Right. And like, I don't know what this visualization is for yet. Like, are we trying? I think I'm trying to convince city planners of a certain something, right? Like, and I've talked to this guy recently, who he's actually like a drainage developer, but he's also like a TikTok influencer, Mr. Barricade. And he loves talking about, barricades and drainage and bike lanes and all kinds of stuff. But he actually can make real architectural drawings of like those driveways that I was posting links to and stuff like that. And so it's like somewhere between architectural drawings of like how we want things to be and data visualizations that sort of show like the trials and tribulations of how things are. Plus, maybe some indicator of like, which streets are really good. Because I went to some talk and some guy was like, oh, so like what cities are really good for skating because it doesn't exist here. And I sort of had to like level with him. I was like, look, it's not that every street in San Francisco is bad. It's just that they're inconsistent, right? And so, there are absolutely certain like sections of sidewalk in various places that are delightful. And the question is like, why are they delightful? What makes them good? And what would it be like to transpose the good things of the little good bits and pieces into like a more interesting whole? But I don't know exactly like what data is going to help us be like, oh yeah, that block over there has that really cool wiggle. where you drop into theta brainwaves and your heart rate lowers, and your pupils dilate.
Well, what if you're writing it just strictly for your audience? Because those people don't care what the texture of your route is, but all your skate buddies do. So it seems like if you're cultivating it really for that audience and you're crowdsourcing good routes and interesting, barriers.
I like that. I like that. It's like you're actually making like a digital, or you're using like mapping tools to like make a version of the city that's like your ski resort.
Yeah, your city. Yeah, exactly.
It's like,
Yeah,
like all of these routes, if you go, east to west on this route, it's like a blue square. You go north south over here, it's green circle.
That's right. Yeah, totally. That's great. Black diamond. Yeah. Eat that.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, cool. If you want the longest route from the top of the 37 bus run, you got to go left here and right here. Take another right over there, and you'll get the most miles.
Scenes in chase movies where the spy is running really fast and the girl at the desk is telling him in his ear, "Turn left at the stairway, go up, 3 flights, drop in." Like that would be amazing if you could hook into this and have like basically turn the city into a challenge course and try to, speed run the city through this game, gamify it.
Right. You'd be like, okay, I either want to take the shortest route there that's also smooth, or I want to take like the longest route there that's got the most, gravity.
Right. The most direct gravity drop, or, you could even set it for your exercise preference. So you want a few climbs or you want some challenge, or like when I'm driving, my sister and I have this really good conversation going because she likes to go this one route to the house and I like to go this other route. And my route is more smaller roads, but I have fewer stops and I go up and down less. So I can just basically go straight to the house and not interact with other traffic. She only has one turn on her route. So she can go straight until she gets to a light and then think about it, make her turn, and then not think about it anymore. So it's really interesting to see, and she definitely, it takes longer, it goes further, it goes up and down more, it wastes gas. It's really interesting to see where people's priorities are really at and what their metric is. So that sort of begs the question of, what data are you storing and what metric? And it seems to me like you want to sort of open the model in some way so you can, have you ever seen oceanographic research, how they do these lines and there's these great oceanographic maps where you can see the various surveys that they've done as they cross-cut the ocean to profile it, with this set of sensors or that set of sensors. And there are aggregated environments where you can, go and get the depth of the ocean, or the temperature of the ocean at a certain depth across a calendar, because so many tracks went through that area with the right sensors and they log it all in this common place.
Mm-hmm.
It's very, very analogous in this.
Yeah, it seems like, having your sort of list of filters, right? Like even in advance of designing the visualization itself, like what are the different things you might want to know?
Now I see a screen at the end of your run and you push black diamond or blue diamond. It's like Waze when you go over some, past something on the road and you got to mark it right then. I wonder if you could use Waze itself.
Right. Yeah. Waze plus like, I don't know, like a Whoop bracelet that like tests your strain, right? Because different bodies experience strain differently.
I wonder if Waze would be able or willing to add a new skateboarding dimension, just like Google has walking and driving and biking. So then you could use Waze's, hazard reporting and roads. They have a lot of roadside, crowdsourced information, routes changing, roads closed, construction zones. They all can go up in a matter of minutes because it only takes 1 or 2 drivers to report it before they validate it and put it on the map.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a screen somewhere where you've got to record I'm just thinking of the app or whatever the rider, the skater's using, and you want to be able to like say, oh, that was, maybe you've got some parameters, so you could even say that was outside of my G range, so it self logs as dangerous or something.
Right. And like, through all of these various city conversations, the sidewalk is often rather under discussed. I went to this like community meeting over the weekend, and there's like a bunch of really elderly folks that came and like, oh, like, where are the skateboarders supposed to go? Where are the bicyclists supposed to go? They're riding on the sidewalk and this and that. And like, it's sort of, people are very quick to like want to give tickets to people who ride on the sidewalk more than they want to like demand that the city make the sidewalk bigger so that there's room for everybody.
Have you dialed into that community down in Florida that's got golf cart roads everywhere now?
No, that sounds great.
Yeah, and so they're the golf cart, they're open air, and they've got these little asphalt, just like you think, just like little tiny golf cart roads like you see on a golf course. But they've definitely built their whole suburbia around it. I mean, there's people who, go a couple miles into town on these little roads.
The Florida Highway Safety and Motor Vehicle .gov has low speed vehicles as its own category.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool. That sounds cool. Is it cool?
I don't know.
I mean, the lifestyle around it is super different than a car lifestyle, because everybody there's a little bit of a corral area for the cars, but they do just tend to pull up in front of buildings and walk into the store and then come back out, and it has a mixed pedestrian feeling in town because people use them like big wheelchairs. But then it also has this, like, I can get on this little path, and they're separating them from the larger car traffic, which is the really interesting part.
Yeah.
And they're glorified bike trails, I guess.
I mean, I've been saying at these meetings, like, we can't keep calling them bike lanes, because and like, it doesn't make sense to call them a pedestrian path, right? Because bike lane, it's marginalizes everybody else.
It's like a mid-speed. It's not a highway. It's not a roadway. In the same. Yeah, that's really interesting, because then if you can find the right way to say that, then you gain all of the constituents of every form factor that
exactly. Like, when people say complete streets, I want them to say walking and biking and skating. But I think we also need to change the terminology for bike lane. Yeah, low speed vehicle could be great.
Low speed sounds like walking to me, and high speed sounds like cars. So
MSV, the mid speed vehicles.
There you go, MSV. That's interesting. HOV, MS. Yeah, I see where you went there. I like that. Mid-speed vehicles, skaters, joggers.
There's also a scale aspect to the vehicles. The fact that those objects are typically less than, like, I don't know, 500 pounds.
Yeah, mid-speed, mid-weight. MSMWV. Gosh.
MSV massive.
Or maybe it's low weight, mid-speed. LWMSV.
What about LWV, low weight vehicles? So it still is vehicular in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
It implies wheels.
Yeah, isn't that funny that we don't really have like a word that just implies something has wheels? Because vehicle, I mean, is a pogo stick a vehicle?
Light vehicle?
I mean, typically people say just like micromobility, but like, it's hard to know whether or not that includes bikes.
That makes me think of finger skateboards.
Right, exactly. Like, it seems like almost prerogative, or sorry, pejorative. Like,
not that. Like, I've been thinking about this term thrivability instead of sustainability, and
yes.
and thrivability has a sound to it that is immediately so much more attractive than sustainability. And in the same way here, you want something that people are like, yeah, that's the ultimate answer. That's where we want to be.
Right. Yeah. And I've been thinking about that, just like when you use skateboarding as a lens, as opposed to like wheelchair access, which are like basically the same thing, except that skateboarding is aspirational. Very few people, I think, aspire for wheelchair.
I'm not looking forward to having my own electric wheelchair, but I am looking forward to driving an electric wheelchair everywhere.
Totally.
And that's a pretty strong argument in terms of the aging population, electric vehicles, smaller, lighter, faster, farther, all that kind of stuff makes a lot more sense. I have a friend I've been working with to redesign a fairing for the Zero motorcycle, and we've doubled the aerodynamic range of the vehicle so far with this enhanced modeling of our fairing system, which mind blows me because this is an electric motorcycle company. You'd think they would have optimized the thing fully, and we're doubling the range just by improving the aerodynamic characteristics. And my friend, I guess the reason I brought it up is because his point is that these vehicles are not the be all end all of they're not that pinnacle of efficiency. They're definitely aspirational, as you put it.
Well, it's the same thing with like the boosted boards. Like those things were terrible. The form factor was god awful. And I was working there. I was like, you guys know that you could fix this and make this a lot better. And like, yeah, but we're not going to do that. Like we're already the market leaders.
We like sharp corners in the front.
Yeah.
Yeah, makes it cheaper to build. Those things are amazing. Cross country, I've seen them in the woods being amazing.
These bikes,
the one wheels.
Oh, the one wheels are nuts. Yeah, I'm basically not. I'm not really here for motorized boards. I don't think it makes sense. Anyways, but yeah, I don't know if anybody has comments on the data viz or whatever and wants to drop them in the Trip City thread. Useful. I'm going to find out about whether or not we got that grant for the urban prototyping in like 5 days. So maybe we'll have 15 grand to play with. We can buy some sensors and really do it.
Was that the Michigan thing?
Yep.
Yeah. Hey, random. I'm friends with Hugo, the one of the founders of Zero. If you ever want to connect.
Oh, that's good to know. This guy I'm working with, he's just bought his third one. He just got the latest one, so we're moving the design over to that bike, and it's different enough. But it's really interesting, and he may be interested in that once we get to the point where we're actually making them. Yeah. This is his second prototype he's getting ready to build.
Yeah.
He bought about $10,000 worth of modeling time on a big simulator, and we can rock, the CAD model through that thing overnight. So it becomes this really fun optimization problem where we're going in a loop with, trying to make the most changes, but controlled enough that we know what's causing the differences each round. Because you have this really, you change one little thing and if it affects the airflow at the back of the bike, it changes everything. And so if you do two changes and they both do something and you get a greater number, but you don't know which one's helping, it's really a lot of that. It's pretty interesting.
Julian, do you know if these bikes are doing really well?
I don't. They're I see one around every once and again. I mean, I don't know. It's a good question.
The Zeros are doing really well. They just got bought up by some country that's committed to a huge fleet of them for some, civic duty. Yeah, they're doing that particular one. I think is doing well.
Nice. It's a good website. I personally don't really understand vehicles that just have letters for names, but that's just me. People love SRS DSR, FX. Like I don't know. I guess it assumes sort of an in crowd that knows and cares. I wasn't raised with a strong male role model.
Yeah, there's some sort of lingo in those numbers that once you know them, that people are. It's like having a secret code. I think, like Volvo numbers. The first number is the number of doors, or second number is the number of cylinders, and something like that. I mean, I really don't even know myself. But the number tells you a lot about the car if you know how to decode it. Maybe we should do that with the sheep.
How many legs does it have?
Yeah.
Okay, well, good. Once I know about this grant, I'll start convening some kind of like weekly meeting or something, and we can do a deeper dive, because I know this isn't technically a formal project yet. But
it isn't.
Well, is it? I mean, I'm down. I just don't know.
I mean, I think it is. I think we said it. I mean, I'm not. I mean, in my mind, it was, and it's got a channel, and that's usually all it takes.
Okay, cool. Well, I'm. It's currently in front deck, not in projects. So I was just sort of enjoying.
Yeah, I'm sure that's. Yeah, let me talk to Augie in IT.
Let's. I wanted to ask you about like how far you want to jump to the shift of visualizing this, because if there's VTOLs landing on rooftops and you don't need roads anymore, I'm always thinking about like the 50% of the city that's made of roads, and how do you recover that and turn it into garden, or do they build on it, or what happens to these roads once we don't need them in the same way?
Well, I think you still need them for social reasons. Like you need them so that people know each other. And like transit becomes sort of like it becomes right now. Roads almost exclusively exist for like the movement of cars, and as soon as you take like if you take most of the cars out of the equation, then it's like, okay, you've got more movement by more different types of people, but it still isn't really like considered public social space. But like any given block could be a thriving community space.
Every intersection could be a thriving community space, or at least a big tree or something, and you still could have all the surface mobility needs. I think would shift to smaller wheeled, lighter local transport if you've got some way to climb up to the roof and fly 10 miles or go to your doctor visit that way, because it's whatever, you don't have to use a road. That was the conversation I started getting when I was using prompting Midjourney. How far did I want to obliterate the familiar?
Well, so I would say like one sort of constraint is that we're going to probably continue to have fire trucks that go on the ground. So like you need to be able to maintain emergency vehicle access down the center of the road. So like there's always going to be some kind of central passable space, and that until you start like ripping down buildings, building alleyways instead. Yeah, we're taking San Francisco as our control here, like that you need a 14-foot emergency lane in the middle. But the rest of the space between the building and the edge of that 14-foot lane, I would say, is fair game. So that's
You're totally right about that, and it totally disappoints me.
I'm sorry. but that said, like I'm realizing like some of the changes I want to propose are just like you take that same architectural drawing and like where it says to the contractor, oh, the lip at the end of the driveway needs to be maximum 1 inch tall. Like I just want them to change that number to half an inch, and it will probably help a lot. Like that's some, like really.
That's interesting.
Really
just
basic.
Identify the tiniest, but a mass of tiny little changes like that in the construction code. That's
like that. That's kind of what I'm interested in as a starting point. Because that's the stuff that's like really straightforward. But then there's sort of like, okay, well, what does the world look like? When more people are moving by skateboard, right? And like, what else do you want? If you could add 2 or 3 feet of sidewalk outside of the trees, what's life on the sidewalk look like?
Well, also it gets to removing like sidewalk barriers, like parking meters and stuff have condensed over time.
Yeah, I mean, like the basic proposition is that like when you say walking and biking, you don't necessarily get a skatable city, but if you make a skatable city, you definitely get really good walking and biking. And so you just use it as sort of a wider net to capture these ideas. But
Yeah,
Julian's idea of a city guide, I think, is really good. I think that architectural drawings are really good. I think you could do like a guidebook to all the little skate parks that you made on different tennis courts.
Well, I've been designing these robotic luggages that are basically like suitcase droids that can put themselves in the back of your luxury SUV and look like a finished component that's part of it. But then you open the hatch and it climbs down and follows you to your meeting. And it's got, it could have everything you need for your whole desk, or it could be your whole office in that thing, or it could just be you're traveling and you don't want to, it just has a following function. And so that kind of thing would need necessarily be much improved it's the same as the golf cart city. I think disability access is a really good thing, except that disability access is so at odds with skateboards because everybody is old and young clashing in the worst possible way.
Well, I mean, that happens, I think, when there's just not enough space for everybody, right? Like no skateboarder, yeah, in the imagination too. But like, no, I don't think any skateboarder like really wants to buzz an old Filipino lady using her walker. You know what I mean? Like they would actually prefer to give her much more space. But when there's only 4 feet of sidewalk, and then there's a sharp curb, and like the street is full of potholes, like then they're forced to share that space. And so I think like the sort of near future vision is like room for both of them. You know what I mean? And then both of them sort of seeing themselves as like politically aligned as opposed to at odds, right? It's like it's the whole like, crabs in a bucket kind of thing. And the bucket is the narrow sidewalk.
I just had some cute skater girl go down the road past the lady coming up the hill on her electric wheelchair, and they waved to each other. And it's a little commercial in my head.
I had this idea of like a taxi service where like, anybody with a wheelchair could like hail a skater, or maybe they've got like a little flag on their wheelchair that says like, hey, if you see this, give me a push. And it's like, often getting into like a lift as a person on a wheelchair or in a wheelchair is actually really cumbersome because you got to like get into the car, and so he's going to fold up the wheelchair and put it in the trunk and all this stuff. So like your options are relatively limited. But a skater is somebody who can like push behind a wheelchair, and actually help you get where you need to go faster. I've done it in the city. You push somebody up like 2 blocks of like 1% grade, and you're saving them a ton of time.
In Black Rock City, if you're riding and there's an art car, the art cars are all dialed down to, super hyper pedestrian aware. And you basically either they want you 10 feet away, or they're fine with you coming up, climbing onto the side and getting towed across the desert. And the idea of lightweight electrics, like wheelchairs that can easily tow at least 1 or 2 people on a corridor run, that would be really fun, to be honest.
Oh, interesting. Because you're saying it's actually it's the wheelchair that's providing power. So in my version of it, it's the skater that's providing power to the analog wheelchair.
Oh, where you're pushing somebody in a chair.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I had it the other way. That's so interesting. Yeah. Because I saw a 1 liter car and like a whole bunch of people getting towed.
Right, and that sounds fun. Like that's like your robotic luggage, like follows you when you're skating through the street, but when you have to go up a hill, like it tows you up, and that sounds great. Exactly. But I guess I'm thinking of like the sort of most common form factor, which is like somebody who got out of the hospital or whatever, and they just have an analog wheelchair that they were given, and now they live in this thing, and they just need help getting up the street.
Right.
The other one, of course, is like redesigning the tactile pavers, right? The ADA compliant tactile pavers that go at the end of every intersection. The yellow dots.
Yes.
Those things are treacherous.
there's one here with a voice, and its voice is so weird because it counts down from 20, and somewhere in the 15, 16 area, the guy sounds like a panic, like he's behind and he's reading it faster. And then he gets down to the lower numbers where you have less time, he relaxes and slows down. And so it's exactly the opposite of what you need. The stress in his voice, you know, sort of cues you to slow down when the time is running out. What would you redo? How would you redo those? What would you do?
So there's a couple of sort of major issues with them. One is that like they extend all the way to the width of like the no lip area on the where the curb meets the street. So you have to like, you always have to like clip the corner of it. If you don't want to ride straight over it, you always clip the corner of it. Riding over it sucks, and at low speeds it basically throws you off your skateboard. So you have to like kind of like get some speed to go over it. So it just like adds a lot of extra stress right there. And like they're pretty tall, so they're high turbulence. And when they're wet, because they're plastic, you hydroplane on them. So basically they're like too tall, too long, and too wide.
That's a metric I hadn't thought of before, but just the stiction of the surface, you know, like if it's a slick, watery vinyl surface you're crossing over in your walkway, and your wheels don't bite. That's a hard one to do any other way but manual.
And like they, you know, they have a little like gridded texture on top of the little dots, so that like they, you know, attach to shoes and stuff, but they don't really attach for that well to polyurethane that's like trying to rotate, you know. And like I've been going with my kid to like karate summer camp or whatever on a dewy morning, and I like watch them like hydroplane across one of those things and almost slip out. And I'm like, yeah, like this. I don't ever walk through San Francisco and see anybody with like a visual aid cane. You know, not to say that there aren't other sorts of visual impairment, right? But it just like in terms of what is most common, there are more people like trying to navigate by scooter and skateboard than there are people to navigate by like these canes. And like it seems to me that we sort of created a solution for a very small user set that ultimately creates a lot of problems for a much bigger user set.
Oh, I get the point there. Yeah.
And it's like, there needs to be a little more alignment between those things. And the nice thing about that one is like, it's an injection molded part, you know? So if you were to just like make a new injection mold and they're like, hey, this is the new standard of ADA compliance, you have to do it. Like it would actually be a business opportunity for them. You know, like they would sell a shit ton of them to every major city who suddenly had to buy them. So that one seems to me like one of the lowest lifts that would have the biggest impact.
You know, Julian, this just came into my brain, but we should be building a list of objects that are 3D printable and saleable, like, and just create an open source catalog that we can fill out and people can download and print useful shit. It would be an interesting like way to drive traffic, and we could collect strange objects, and it would just be a library, part of a digital arm. Do you have a digital arm like that?
It's analog.
No, but I mean in terms of your
I know
online presence. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff that is, you know, like digital download things that I was talking I think I was talking to Camille the other day.
His speech could be in the library is all I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I like your analog arm. It's
Dude, did you just see that tree branch fall?
No, really?
Yeah. The power lines are still going up and down.
Oh yeah. We just had a tree fall on our power lines.
Oh no.
I'm gonna go look at that.
Oh,
That's exciting. All right, see ya.
Take care, guys. Nice to hang.
See ya.
Yeah.
Who's that?
Well. I've just had y'all in my pocket. I didn't realize everybody was dropping off, so I just yammering. But
it's all good.
We're scheduled for next week with Jason, so hey, fingers crossed that it lands.
Yeah, that'd be amazing. It'd be a fun project for sure.
Yeah, he's deep in just like fundraising land, which
right.
I've had this experience like multiple times over the last year for him, like, all right, let's do this project. And then he's like, okay, but we don't have the money. And I'm like, oh, well, fine. But I think, I don't know. This one seems so directly tied to fundraising that I think he'll find a way.
Yeah.
But yeah, everything's going good.
Yeah, just trying to get these excited about these book projects. It's been like just really mechanical time, just like dealing with all the crap of getting files in the right condition and all that kind of stuff, which is fine and fun, and I'm happy to do the work. It's also exhausting.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm off my sleep cycle completely now.
Right, just like living in the time scale of all the little modules, like being like, is this one in CMYK? Okay.
Yeah, all that stuff, and then just I guess if you're in that world, you find like shortcuts, but it seems like just even it's like there are 43 images in this one collage, and do I have to convert them all to CMYK? Like, I understand why I would have to, or can I just tell the printer it's like just run it through your grinder and convert it to CMYK, or right. Do I just cook out the entire collage as CMYK and just let some magical intermediary process within Illustrator do the conversion? It's just that kind of stuff. Or like, how come I can't just batch convert and then something is already dealing with like the naming conventions to just solidify everything? Where's the magic thing that is, I don't know. And it's also like learning. Okay, real. So like, why did I, knowing that it needed to be CMYK, why didn't I like 3 weeks ago just be like, all right, just when I create the images, let me do them and make sure and convert them right then, just from the get-go. Like, what was I not thinking about at that point? Was I just like in the flow of creativity and just being like, man, that doesn't even pop into my head, because I'm just like, oh man, this is amazing. And there's some other process that just doesn't enter into it, being like, hey, in a few weeks, you're going to go through this, so you might as well just deal with it right now. I don't know.
Yep. It's such a pain. I once went to press with this black and white book that I was working on, and I delivered the whole thing RGB because I wasn't thinking about it. Mm-hmm. And they like made the first plates, and I was lucky I was sitting on press because they came out all fucked up. And I like, what is going on here? And I was like, mm-hmm. A literal stop the press moment. And I was like, what is going on? They're like, well, these are all in RGB. I was like, you didn't say anything.
Yeah.
Like what? Why would you not? There's no black in RGB. Like, yeah. Come on now. And so I had to like, redo the files on site and like re-deliver the thing. And like, I didn't lose my press time or anything, but yeah, they turn out really bad if you don't do it. So it's not fun.
All right, well, I'm gonna bounce and
cool.
Go back into that little corner of hell.
Okay, well, good luck out there.
All right, my friend.
All right, take it easy.
See ya.
Bye.